Just answering question. Lab Tech. A little background history. This is little dinky things. It's not a complete history. 1954, South Korea rejected a Liancourt Rock ownership judgment by the International Court of Justice. There was a proposal to let some third party or some third country solve the dispute between Japan and South Korea over over some rocks. And I'm not oversimplifying it, they're just rocks. 2018, the South Korean government, under their president, reneged on an agreement concerning the comfort women issue. South Korea was occupied by Japan at one time. And younger generations of South Koreans that weren't alive during the war, the North-South Korean War, the poverty it caused, sometimes resent Americans being in the country as a military presence, specifically to make sure that North Korea doesn't invade their freaking country. Favorable views of North Korea started increasing, and then this changed in 2010 when North Korea attacked South Korea in some way. The details of this are not relevant, but it took a direct attack, which is specifically what the American forces were supposed to prevent, for them to stop talking about kicking the Americans out, at least for a while. So you get the idea from this little bit of tidbit here. So I'm going to bring up the actual subject matter of the video. But I want to point out something. The group of propagandists that want you to believe something negative about Japan includes any group of people that don't like the way Japan is currently. There's a growing level of nationalism in Japan that is against whoever's running the country at the time, that gets in the way of the minority population wanting to overrule the majority and be a hyper-nationalist, goose-stepping Nazi population again. They are literally the same thing. And they will go in league with the devil itself because evil doesn't care who it agrees with. And there are South Koreans that are being manipulated by North Koreans. And some Japanese people trying not to making sure you don't know that they're actually Japanese. It's in somebody's best interest that a bunch of Koreans are told to do something that's counterproductive for themselves. In 2011, October, batches of Fukushima rice grown from 48 test patches were found to no longer have dangerous levels of anything in them. Now, that doesn't mean I would eat them or you would eat them, but that does mean by 2011 October, most of the patches of ground were no longer producing food that was dangerous. It had to be examined continually. 2014, after 3 years, all of the 360,000 tons of rice harvested tested below a specific number of becquerels per kilogram and was under the upper limit on food that your body emits. It was under the level of radiation you emit, meaning it was safer to eat from a cancer perspective than eating a human body, or a cow, or dirt itself that was completely clean. Yeah, I'm not kidding about this. So let's ignore that they literally had a food limit rating that was set up to where effectively any radiation was considered bad. They lowered their standards, which means they really raised them. They said, we're going to use a lower threshold for what's considered dangerous, meaning we're going to consider things that wouldn't be dangerous to be dangerous because they'd just gotten out of a radiation accident that it was caused by an earthquake. So from their perspective, it was, let's just make sure the food's extremely safe and clean because we don't want to get hurt. Is that good enough? No, not for people who won't shut the hell up about this. And that was 2014. In the European Union, the maximum is 5 times worse. So they had 5 times better testing procedures. And this was independently testable because any son of a bitch can go out, pull a carrot out of the ground or some rice and test it. This isn't something you can keep secret because you can just test it yourself. This is like people saying, "Oh, chemtrails directly over my house. They affect everybody out here, but somehow or other I can't test and find anything." Because you're not looking, because you know you're not going to find anything. In the United States, we allow 10 times as much Becquerel rating in food, and always have. For baby food. And the United Nations does as well, because they have a very bad standard. But the standard is still better in the European Union, and Japan's standard is better. But no, they're hiding something by literally testing it, submitting test results, and not being able to stop you from... It's against the law for you to run a test on rice from Japan. Somehow or other, magically, you can't do that. Because you're going to sit there, "I'm sorry, my arms are tied, I can't do anything. Let's keep talking propaganda that benefits North Korea and whoever's running for office that year." This is starting to sound like Ophirian. But anyway, let's get on with it. In 2016, less than 0.1% of the food items exceeded this extremely careful and safety-minded radiation level by 1%. And again, it's 10 times as stringent as it is in the United States. And they decided they weren't going to change the standards. They just decided that, honestly, that it was expensive to do all these tests. And they decided, okay, since the only place we're getting this from is from backyard farmers and people growing food and picking up wild plants, none of the cultivated farms are doing anything, we're going to not require every bag be tested. Oh, by the way, they were testing 100% of the food, not a percentage, 100%, which was expensive and somewhat wasteful. They decided after that period of time, 2016, 6 billion yen a year is a little bit much. So anyway, in 2020, they decided that after the Olympics is over with, they'll switch to random testing. They're still testing 100% of the food. Why they made this announcement at all, I don't get. But they decided to wait until after the Olympics, because that way everybody would be happier. No, you can't appease paranoid people by actually doing what they ask you to do. They'll just shit on you for some other reason. So here we go. Did you look at the contaminated soil collected by the government? I looked at their reports that you ignored that showed that it wasn't contaminated. They grow rice just 2 meters away from those bags of contaminated soil. No, that's a test plot to see if it's leaching into the ground, and they don't sell that, and that's one little field 20 feet across. That's because rice is really good at detecting it. Which means if there was anything to worry about, it would show up. And again, they have a higher standard, a higher quality standard than America by 10 to 1 and by Europe by 2 to 1. Do you think it's safe? The food that's being sold? Yes. That test bed right next to the contaminated soil? No. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people growing food literally hundreds of miles away or 10 miles away. We're talking about areas that have tests that safe. We're talking about areas you're ignoring because you're a propagandist or a consumer of propaganda, and you're never going to shut up, so I can never convince you. I'm not here to appease you. I'm not here to make you feel important, Daddy. I'm not your bitch. So suck it. If it's safe, then there is no reason they collected the soil in separate bags. The soil you're talking about is actually the collected soil that is contaminated. That is not where the food's being grown. The food is being grown away from contaminated soil, because why the fuck would you think they would grow it in contaminated soil? No, really, where did you get this idea? Oh, I know where you got it from. Beautiful Girl by Dana or propaganda groups that you don't even know are actually really, really trying to make sure everything is fucked up in the Asian area. When it rains or winds, it goes into the rice field. The rice field you're talking about that's 20 feet away, there's a legitimate picture of that. And that is a test plot next to the contaminated area, the place where contaminated soil is placed. They're waiting until it shows nothing going on before they move that soil again. That is not food that's being harvested because it's a 20-foot across fucking farm plot. That doesn't mean it's being used to grow food for the Olympics. You're specifically making a moo-ha-ha, wring-our-hands, snidely whip-hash story where TEPCO is literally growing food on purpose in radioactive contaminated soil when they don't need to, and trying to give it to Olympic people so that they can kill them with radiation instead of just taking out a machine gun and blasting away. This is Japan we're talking about. They have a history of doing things non-covertly, like literally destroying Pearl Harbor. These fuckers are not subtle. I'm not being nice here at all. Japanese people, when they're violent or nasty, are not subtle. They bitch slap you, and they make you call them daddy. Bitch. So anyway, no, they're not going to do that, and you're full of shit. This rice will be served to people during the Olympic Games. I will repeat my contaminated blah, 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 blah. You sound like a goose stepper from North Korea. Pro tip, every single nationalist in North Korea is a goose stepper. They're one notch short of being Nazis. They're one notch short of being imperial Japanese invaders. If you stop thinking of North Korea's government as anything other than a slightly halted and slightly controlled version of what the Japanese Empire was before it got its ass kicked, if you just consider that a little bit, you wouldn't be so nationalistically interested in fucking over everybody except North Korea. If you look at the shit that they do through the state, you can watch state-run television out of North Korea, and if you know what they're saying, if you know what the language is, you hear them constantly talking about continual terrorist attacks by American government and Japanese and South Korea and everybody else. They're paranoia-driven society. No, the Japanese government didn't go out of its way to grow food and sell it, by the way, to everybody, not just the Olympic team people selling it to their own people, that's infested with radioactive material when they don't need to. There are parts in the United States where people can't grow food because we have toxic waste dumps. Lots of places do. And if you're downrange of it, you can't grow food there. So they import food. That's the simple solution. But no, your idea of a simple solution is to go to the place that literally the contaminated soil has been taken and grow food there on purpose for some fucking reason because you're a scramble brain. Okay, that's the end of the conversation, what there is of it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And I do hope that the rest of you actually listen, because this idiot isn't. Again, no. Why would anybody do that? That's a waste of energy. Now, if you want to show proof that that food, that test plot, exists, first of all, currently, I didn't point that out, and is obviously has to be fed to people years later at the Olympics Games that they weren't actually scheduled for yet. Kind of a weird conspiracy theory, huh? Fine. Go ahead and show me proof that that was done at all. And again, you can't point to conspiracy theory pages. You have to point to actual sources. The test plots that were done in the range of the contaminated soil were reported on. I'm not going to offer any links because you guys don't even bother reading them. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.